struggles in the fourth quarter have been part of the storyline of the season as the Ravens prepare for a Thursday nighter against the Bucs. Our Rex Ryan said right here on this show on Monday what he thinks he's seeing in Lamar late in these games and why it's happening. Give a listen.
I think he's pressing. And I see it. This is not the same guy we see, in the first three quarters of the game. And part of it is it's the contract. Like, I'm just telling you, how could it not be? When he walked away from X amount of dollars, whatever it was, but he looks to me like that something's just not right. And to me, it's weighing on this guy.
So that was Rex here. As he was talking, I saw both of you at this end of the table sort of shaking your heads in disagreement. Why?
It's not the contract, G. It's the defense. The Baltimore Ravens defense is really bad in the fourth quarter. They're allowing on average 10 points and 123 yards of offense, both of which are the worst in the National Football League. So when we start talking about Lamar Jackson pressing, yeah, he's pressing because he knows he has to overcome a suspect defense. The other thing that he has to overcome is not having the benefit of an offensive line that can close out games by running the football. The Baltimore Ravens are 16th in run block win rate in the fourth quarter. Now, for context, from 2018 through 2021, the Baltimore Ravens offensive line in the fourth quarter, second in run block win rate. So those are the two issues that are exacerbating the problem in the production or lack thereof that we're seeing from Lamar Jackson. Let's not blame this on the contract. These aren't excuses. There are reasons as to why we're not seeing Lamar Jackson play MVP football in clutch time.
Chris, Lamar Jackson just isn't playing well. He's 25th in the league in completion percentage, and he's 25th in off-target throws. So he's human. I agree with Rex from a standpoint, it's human nature that a consequential deal of generational wealth doesn't get done. And statistically, when you watch him, he's not the same guy right now. I agree, they're blowing fourth quarter leads. The defense can't end games the way they used to. They don't have a running back. Hopefully they're going to address that. But he's just not playing as well as he once was. Now, look, if I'm the Ravens, do I still sign him? Of course I do. But right now, he's just not the same player.
The hard part with me accepting this idea as a contract is Rex said it himself. He's good for the first three quarters. He was great for the first several games of the season.
Right.
Does he forget about the contract?
Then,
He forgets about the contract for 3 quarters. In the fourth quarter, they must put something up on the Jumbotron and say, remember, Lamar, his contract's not signed yet. Then he's like, oh, I forgot. Interception. I actually think that is more schematic issues and it's part connected to that defense. I think they're so committed to this big personnel in part because they want to run the clock, they want to run the ball, that they put Lamar in a tough situation. When you're blitzing him, the way you scare teams out of blitzing you is with big plays.
Yep.
It's hard to create big plays when you got guys with number 40s, numbers or with numbers in the 40s and tight ends out there so you can run. Like, you need to crack somebody over the head with a big 50-yard gain, and then they'll stop blitzing Lamar. I think that's a bigger problem, but they're scared to be that aggressive because they could end up in 3 and outs, which puts the defense back on the field. That's the conundrum. It's not the contract.
Number one, if I'm Lamar, I'd be pressing too. But not because of the contract. It's because when you think about the injuries that they've suffered at key positions, like his number one running back didn't start the season healthy. His left tackle didn't start the season healthy. Rashad Bateman has missed several games. Without Rashad Bateman in the lineup, this whole offense looks completely different. And at the start of the season, it was Lamar. Lamar was almost like, screw it, I'll do it myself. Yeah. Like, that's sort of been how he's had to play, and it worked in the beginning, and now it's not. Like, they have the worst point differential in the fourth quarter of any team in the NFL. It's not the contract. This guy puts more pressure on himself than anybody on the outside. So I don't think it's the contract. It really is real fundamental issues with this
The other thing about the contract is he's going to get one. There are no circumstances under which the Ravens are going to say, maybe we're better off with that. He's going to be within a yacht of Deshaun Watson money regardless, right? Whether he gets 170 guaranteed, 190 guaranteed. So there's going to be generational money there regardless of the outcome, right?
I'll push back on that. Over 20 years, some players can handle it better than others. Like, that's very logical. We're not inside his mind. And look, he's a great competitor. He deserves to get a deal done. I thought it was going to get done. And at some point, it has to impact him because when you watch him play, he's just not playing as well as he once did earlier in the season.
Well, listen, he's fifth in QBR and he's top 5 in rushing. So we say he's not playing well. The team is not having the results that we expect. But you can't look at those metrics and say Lamar Jackson isn't a really, really good quarterback.
Right.
And that's my problem with all of the criticism that we're heaping on top of him. The context of the situation matters. Not having a running game in the fourth quarter and having a suspect defense makes the issues that Lamar Jackson has to overcome that much more of a problem.
Let's bookmark this one. This is an interesting conversation because I sort of see both sides. We'll come back to it as we continue. Meantime, we have a huge weekend of college games. Let's take a close look at those, shall we? It starts in Happy Valley. Number 2, Ohio State taking on Penn State. The Buckeyes on a roll right now, having scored at least 49 points in each of their 4 conference games this season. Then 7 Eastern on ESPN, we have an SEC border rivalry, Kentucky and number 3 Tennessee. First time since 1951 that both these teams are ranked when they meet. And then primetime Saturday night on ABC, the great interstate rivalry in-state between Michigan and Michigan State. Wolverines have lost their last 2 and 10 of the last 14. And obviously this is a monster game for the unbeaten Wolverines to keep it going. And there they are. Heather and Paul are back with us. As always, when we need college football insight, this is where we turn. Let's talk first and foremost, Heather, about the Big 2 in the Big 10. Ohio State, big game. Michigan, big game. Are these teams on a collision course to meet undefeated at the end of the season?
Yes, they are. If they are top 4 quality teams, which they appear to be, there's absolutely no reason that they should lose before they meet in the regular season finale. If by some chance Penn State were to pull off a miracle, there's a possibility that they could all...
That idea. And let's stay in New York for the third one. Who should the Giants trade for?
DJ Moore. Right now, the New York Football Giants' leading receiver is Richie James, who has 191 yards. That is really remarkable. DJ Moore is young. He has a good catch radius. He would come in immediately, guys, and be their number 1 receiver, which is really saying a lot about the position. So Carolina's in a rebuild. They gave up Robbie Anderson, Chris McCaffrey. DJ Moore is available, and he would give them immediate upgrade in a position they're desperate for.
I love it. Now, that's your former team, the Giants, so let's talk about them for a minute. There is no team in the NFL that is getting less from their wide receivers, to the point that he just made. They don't have a receiver on their team with 200 yards in reception yardage this season.
Yeah, that's not good.
No team is getting so. My question is, and maybe they make a deal here because maybe they have surprised everyone, including their own new front office. And are they? That's the question on the screen. Are they a legitimate threat this year? I think their own fans want to know the answer to that question. Are they a legitimate contender to do something meaningful in a playoff scenario this year, Chris Canty?
I think they can win a playoff game, but can they go on a championship run? No, I don't see that. There are a couple of deficiencies on this team that I don't think they're going to be able to overcome. When you look at this Giants team, they don't have any explosive playmakers on the opposite side of the ball outside of Saquon Barkley. So that would be an area of concern. David Sills, the 5th, is probably their most reliable receiver, especially after you watch what happened in Jacksonville this past weekend with guys dropping balls. I said after that game that they could use David Sills the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. They could use all because right now they don't have enough explosive playmakers. Now, I like what Brian Daboll is doing in terms of calling a game that Daniel Jones can manage, putting guardrails on his quarterback so he doesn't make those consequential mistakes. But at some point, you need your quarterback to be a difference maker, and I just don't see that from Daniel Jones' play as of yet.
Let me see from Kmart. What do you think?
About the Daniel Jones of it all?
About the Giants of it all.
The Giants in that locker room, they don't care that people are underselling them. They know they are behind Brian Daboll. He has them like a feisty team. Like, they actually believe, like, no, when we're playing the Ravens, we think we can beat them. Like, they're not thinking that they are underdogs in any capacity. I think to Chris's point, they do have deficiencies. I think when you look at this roster, when you look at the offense, it flows through Saquon, and we all know that. It's like, Saquon, get us where we got to go. Daniel, escape out the pocket. And the guardrails that are there, it's for Daniel Jones not to mess up, not to lose them games.
The other thing we have to consider, too, is the Giants lost 2 starters on that offensive line in that Jacksonville game, including right tackle Evan Neal. So we have to see how that impacts what happens in the short term and long term for this team, especially on offense.
But a lot of this question on the screen, Dominique, in modern pro football comes down to the quarterback and how much one believes in him. How much does this one believe in him?
Not enough to say that they're going to make a deep run into the playoffs. I'm not one who undersells his running ability. That's really important and it's really valuable, but he's going to have to give you something else because in the playoffs it's going to be very different. The pressure's going to be on him. They could win a game depending on the matchup that they get. They get the Seahawks or somebody like that. It's possible, but I don't see against a real competitor, even the teams that aren't playing all that well right now, I think our quarterback bias makes me feel like I would still go with Tom Brady and the Bucs and that defense over this team because they have a higher ceiling. I do think that there's less variance in performance for the Giants, but I think it's such a small area and it's not going to reach the ceiling that it needs to reach.
Well, think about how many times we praised Daniel Jones for the fourth quarter comebacks. It's like they've been trailing in fourth quarters.
Right.
Like that's not a recipe for success in the playoffs. And I think when you face good defenses, they're going to know to key in on Saquon.
Saquon.
Right, that's exactly right. The opposing coordinator is going to make them win left-handed, and that means Daniel Jones from the pocket making throws down the field. Yeah. He hasn't proven he can do that.
Whom?
Yeah, and exactly. In fairness to whom? Unless they could get the whole Sills family.
Well, that's why maybe these next 6 days are no more important to any team in the NFL than they are to the Giants. Again, the trade deadline is next Tuesday. If you're 6-1, you have to believe you have a chance. They need to make a move for a playmaker on the outside, don't they?
No question about it. They've got to get more explosive on the outside. Kadarius Toney hasn't worked out. Kenny Golladay hasn't worked out. Those were guys that they had pegged as being those difference makers. The new coaching staff doesn't see it that way. But as far as the Giants are concerned with Daniel Jones, he's shown that he can make plays with his legs, like to Dominique's point, but they're going to have that. They got to have that element in the vertical pass